Hi, I'm Kate. I am a senior and history major at Shippensburg University. This year I was awarded the undergraduate research grant from SHIP, and my research is on horsemanship and the Virginia colony. I'll be focusing on how horses shaped the environment for Europeans. I'll also be focusing on the years 1609 to 1799. This was mostly when the colonies were still under British authority. I'm passionate about this topic because I'm passionate about my country and my country's history, and I'm also passionate about horsemanship. And America really is the way that it is today because of how horses were utilized in the 16 and 1700s, and then later the 1800s, and then even into the 20th century. But it all started when they were introduced in Jamestown in 1609. By the turn of the century, other towns had developed with horsepower, including Williamsburg in 1699, which was to serve as the state capital. It was really the utilization of horsepower that led to the formation of many towns and cities, and further so many developments of civilization along the Atlantic coast. So our country really is the way that it is today because of horses, and that's why I like to explore it. Some background information on myself. I've spent many years studying horsemanship. I started riding lessons when I was 9. Throughout my teens, I worked at various horse farms so I could learn more. As an adult, I joined Pirelli Natural Horsemanship. They are a horse and rider training facility based out of Pagosa Springs, Colorado. They utilize ancient but humane training methods. For this project, I am reading many books, most of which I've gotten through. Some of them I still have yet to read. They're basically an assortment of primary and scholarly secondary sources. But the primary sources are typically written from the 1700s going on into the 1800s. Some sources I have are from the 1600s. This is from a man named William Cavendish. I think it's pronounced Candish. Better known as the Duke of Newcastle. He was a cavalry officer during the British Civil War, and he fought for Charles I, which, if you know history, means it didn't go well for him. So in the end, he was exiled to France. While in France, he was exposed to French theories of arena horsemanship. This arena style of horsemanship focused mainly on cavalry tactics and dressage, a riding style that emphasized balance, suppleness, and obedience in both horse and rider. They became famous across Europe. Second great source that I have is by this gentleman, Henry Herbert, known as the 10th Earl of Pembroke. He was a cavalry master in the mid-1700s, and his work is so profound that it remains the British cavalry way well into the Napoleonic Wars. People were still following his principles. So I mentioned that the French were really famous and profound throughout their country, if not all of Europe, for their menage and their horsemanship work in the arena. One such master of these schools, named François Robichon de Guigneux, he wrote a book titled École de Cavalerie, and his teachings were considered revolutionary in horsemanship teachings. So much so that he became, and he is still known today as the patron saint of dressage, and so many of his methods are still used today. I have works from other French masters as well, and there were even some that came over and served the American cause in the American Revolution. One such gentleman was named de Le Bon, Motin de Le Bon. He wrote a book for Adams, actually, John Adams, and his book is titled Éléments de tactique pour la cavalerie. So there's a lot that I can learn about horsemanship regarding European cavalry tactics. A lot of that translated into work into the United States, so that's why it's of interest to my research. Another source I'm going to be utilizing in my own horsemanship is by this gentleman named Nate Bowers. He published several DVDs through Pirelli Natural Horsemanship, who I'm a student of, and he helps elaborate on how to teach yourself how to drive, but also how to teach your horse how to drive. It's not a good idea to do those at the same time, but he helps elaborate on at least how to get me started. And I got these DVDs. There's six DVDs altogether, 2 DVDs in each box. And I've been studying these for the past year. So I've worked on it with some other horses, so I'm not completely green as I'm starting this. And I got this from my grant money last year, and it's going to be excellent to actually enact it now with my new horse. With the grant money I've received, I am buying a horse cart and a blacksmith kit. And with these, I'm going to recreate via experimental archaeology how these were really used in the 1600s and 1700s. To start off, I'm going to be doing some ground exercises with my own mare, as she's going to be a critical part of my research. Now, the games may not seem like much, and you may look at them and think, what does this have to do with driving or even riding a horse? But I want to engage her mind, and I want to make sure her emotions are intact. Pembroke, Newcastle, all the great masters of history say you must warm up a horse on the ground first before you can have any specialization in the task you're asking of them. So I'm going to get started. This is diary 1 of what's going to be a series of videos for my university requirement of the grant. The Earl of Pembroke elaborates on building a horse's confidence. And a key way to do that is to have them touch and play with what would normally be a scary object. When she first saw this ball, she thought it was the devil's own witchcraft. So I taught her to first push the ball with her nose, and now she bravely likes to kick the ball with her leg. Walking sideways is considered a critical part of horse training. When riding or pulling a cart, they may need to actively slide sideways, either out of danger or simply to move where I want them to. Now, she's just started this, so her movements are still rather sticky. You see, she's not walking smoothly side to side. So we will be working on this. Pirelli states that the better a horse walks sideways, the better she can do everything else. Now, going back to Pembroke's emphasis on teaching a horse confidence, this tarp represents something she might be scared of. Now see there, I asked her just to step on it, and she said no. She'd almost rather push into my space than step on. This time I blocked her from doing that. So she doesn't like to cross water. When we come across a stream or large puddle, she actively avoids it, which can be dangerous if she decides to fight me. So here I'm asking her to sniff it first. I'm asking her simply to stand on the tarp with her 2 front legs and find comfort in doing so. I hid a treat on there too. I try to give her comfort every now and again and just reassure her, you can sniff the tarp and then just step on it. We have a saying in Pirelli, nose, neck, maybe the feet. And since we're stepping on things, so she learns to confidently sniff the tarp, then she'll get curious enough she might want to touch the tarp with her leg. Like that. Now, little by little, I'll be encouraging her to put not just one hoof, which I think she just did there, but to rest both hooves on the tarp. And every now and again, I give her a treat, not as a bribe, but as a bonus. Now she's getting kind of cocky with it and actually playing with the tarp, which is perfect. Pembroke would call this exercise a means of, and I quote, improving her natural disposition. Now this is a Pirelli exercise. She has to learn the pattern of walking around the barrels in a figure 8 with very little pressure from me. And the pressure I use here is called drive and draw. I draw her in and drive her out. And she tries to break the pattern there by cutting in front of me, and she has to sidle back onto the pattern, which she did. So I draw her in and I drive her out. And she doesn't like it when I draw her into my space. That's why the ears go back. That should improve over time. This is really how she responds to me as her leader and to my pressure. Down the road, she'll be able to do this at the trot and the canter, also when I'm riding her. Now here, self-explanatory, stepping on the pedestal. And I probably should have used the stick there to guide her nose instead of the rope. But mission accomplished. She's quite wobbly getting on the pedestal. I made that from an old tractor tire and boards. So when she steps on it with her immense weight, it kind of gives way under her a little bit. So it's a great confidence test. Now I've added the obstacle of me on the pedestal, so she has to step on it with me there. That can be a bit challenging for some horses. But I try to ease her into it, help her relax. You'll see her head drop and her eyes start to blink. This is mostly a comfort game for horses and a bonding moment for us. So, last but not least, with the blacksmith kit that I'm getting from this grant, I'm going to be exploring period blacksmithing. To further along this part of my research, I have visited 2 forges this year, one in Colonial Williamsburg and another here in PA, known as Artisans of the Anvil. In Colonial Williamsburg, I had the honor of meeting Master Blacksmith Kenneth Schwartz. He is head of the historical blacksmith shop in Colonial Williamsburg, and he helped explain to me the historical significance of blacksmithing. I saw his shop. Regarding horsemanship, he talked about bits being made as well as stirrups for saddles. Here in PA, I worked with a gentleman named Robert Earhart. He's a master blacksmither here in PA who works at Artisans of the Anvil. So after meeting both men and getting some hands-on experience myself, being the bookworm and historian that I am, now I'm going to work it here in my own forge at home. Helping me in this process is a book that I purchased called The Skills of Blacksmith. It's Mastering the Fundamentals of Blacksmithing. So between this, some of the hands-on experience I got here in PA, and the historical help that I got in Colonial Williamsburg, I should be set to get my own forge going. Again, my first attempt at a knife. Okay. Now, from what I learned at Williamsburg, the main reason I want to blacksmith is to make horsemanship items and learn period farrier work.
Mantle hooks because it's Christmas. Oh. And we put out, I think, almost 3,000 of them this season. Oh, wow. All right, what do you think? All right, good. All right, turn it upside down. Yep. Remember, give it a little bit of an angle, back farther. Nope, more towards the anvil. Yep, more towards you. Right there. There you go. Tap easy. See if you're there. All right. Go in there. Give it a couple taps flat. Oh, no, right there.
So you can see I have a little twist there in the handle, and this was my very first knife. So to get started, I'm heating up the coals, which later got very hot. Since it had just snowed, I utilized that as a fire extinguisher. And as I'm waiting for the coals to keep heating up, I decide to take my tools, get familiar with them, and play around with them for a bit. The hammer is a decent size. It's about 3 pounds. I'm assessing how heavy it is. Using my tongs, I went ahead and got some horseshoes to experiment with. Now my tongs are really handle. I have 2 sizes, a smaller one and this is a larger one. My anvil I purchased, it's about 25 pounds, pretty small. My bellows likewise are fairly small, but it's good to get started. With them, that's going to heat up the coals to the temperature that I need them to. Maybe down the road I'll get something bigger, like not as big as what they had in Williamsburg, but big enough to work. This is my chisel. It's a nice small chisel. I'll be using it for some of the finer work I do, maybe when I start making some nicer things down the road. It has a fairly sharp edge. And that's all my tools.